Welcome to the Jewish Diaspora Report. On this week's episode, we're going to look at the recent banning of the Pulitzer Prize-winning Holocaust book Maus, the recent survey showing America's lack of Holocaust knowledge, and the other or lesser known Holocaust. Let's get started. According to a CNBC report on January 26th, the news broke that a Tennessee school board has voted to remove the Pulitzer Prize-winning graphic novel Maus from the 8th grade language arts curriculum due to their concerns about profanity and images of female nudity in the depiction of Polish Jews that were survivors of the Holocaust. At issue is the word damn and the use of a woman's breast in one of the scenes. On January 10th, a vote by the McMinn County School Board, which only began attracting attention Wednesday, comes amid a number of battles in school systems around the country as conservatives target curriculums over teaching the history of slavery and racism in America. Just to give some background for those of you who maybe don't know what the book Maus is, it's spelled M-A-U-S. It is a survivor testimony based on the author's father. He is a survivor of the Holocaust, and Art Spiegelman created a comic book style graphic novel of his father's testimony as a way of trying to make it accessible for young people. The Nazis are represented with human bodies, but cat heads. So imagine sort of a cat on a person's body, and the Jewish people are represented by people with mice heads. This is meant to sort of almost dehumanize a little bit to allow it to be a little bit more palatable for young people to read such a difficult story. Some backstory on my own experience with the book Maus. It's actually kind of interesting. It's the first book I ever read that led me on a path towards education and Holocaust studies. I remember specifically walking into my elementary school library, so excited. It was the book day where you go and your parents give you a couple of dollars and you can go and pick from any book on display and bring it home and you can read it. And I'm not sure why this book stood out to me, but I recall specifically finding this book and feeling like I needed to read this book. Maybe it was the graphic novel aspect, maybe because I didn't really care much for reading when I was in elementary school. Maybe it could have been because I was aware of having grandparents who were survivors myself, that I felt that I really wanted to purchase this book and read it. And I read the entire thing, even though I really didn't like reading at the time. And it really changed my life. I could actually credit this book probably for starting me on the journey of becoming a scholar of World War II, of history, and maybe even as a teacher of history myself. This book obviously plays a very large role within North America, maybe even the world, for teaching young people about the horrors of the Holocaust in a very accessible way for students in grade 8 or 7. It's a little disappointing to see places canceling this book or taking it off the curriculum because they believe that teaching these difficult subjects is not a good idea. I think canceling the book for the fairly flimsy reason of a cartoon woman being depicted or the word damn being so difficult for students to understand is a little bit silly. I think the purpose of this book is to spark conversation, it's to spark questions, it's to hopefully engage young people with some of these difficult topics. As a teacher myself, of course, I struggle sometimes with how to teach secondary school age, high school age students how to deal with things like the Holocaust, how to explain why they happen, how to explain how to stop it from happening. How do good people do bad things? These are very difficult and complex questions. And of course, we have to hope that students will gain some perspective and understand how to relate these things to today. Of course, we know history to be cyclical, and we need to make sure that people are aware of what's happening in the world and what has happened in the world in order to fight it and stop it from happening again, especially when we see the rise of anti-Semitism. This book is all more important to try and explain to young people what anti-Semitism leads to. I remember standing at the Majdanek death camp and reading the quote, "Let our fate be a warning to you." And this is written on the tower that overhangs the ashes of thousands and thousands of victims of the Holocaust. And if that is not what we should be trying to do, is making sure that their fate is not forgotten and we do not take that warning. Yes, some books have very difficult topics, and if we shy away from them, we will forget history completely. I think that we need to use those books as tools with the proper scaffolding and context around it so we can teach about these very difficult issues to ensure that students and people of all generations will never forget the mistakes of the past. I think with the right scaffolding and information and background from the teacher and class discussions and understanding, it could easily be used as a great tool for making sure that the next generations are made aware of the difficult issues of the past and make sure that they don't happen again. Right after this break, we're going to talk a little bit about maybe what happens when you ban books and not allow students to understand these difficult situations. This is the Jewish Diaspora Report. We'll be back in a moment.